I would like you to help me welcome the Honorable Reverend Senator James T. Meeks.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful and a warm introduction. What a joy to be able to write your own introduction. You get a chance to say so many good things about yourself without saying them. I am really excited to be here. This is such a prestigious moment and honor, and but you know things are going bad when the guy who invites you doesn't show up. And so I've been kind of worried about that. He sent his wife, and he didn't come, and so it could only go downhill from there. What a pleasure it is to be with you all. I was excited when I received the letter to come here, and I wanted my father to be proud of me. My father, 75 years old, and never had the opportunity to become educated, but a great man, heart of gold. I know that he has to be the greatest man in the whole world. So I really wanted him to be proud of me, and I said to him yesterday, I said, Dad, tomorrow I'll be at the City Club, and I'm the speaker. And he didn't say anything. He didn't smile. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't pat me on the back. He didn't congratulate me. He just kind of walked away with this puzzled look on his face. So about an hour later, he came back. He sat next to me and he said, Son, now, I try not to get in your business, but as the pastor of a church, I don't think you ought to be at no club. And so if he asks any of you, tell him I was not here. I was not here. Then I was excited when the topic that I was supposed to speak about is education. And I was kind of nervous because I saw a mic and I knew that that meant that people were going to ask me questions. And coming in, I met a guy who said that he worked on the Education Funding Advisory Board under Edgar. And then I met another gentleman who said he worked on education funding under Thompson. And then while I was going to the washroom, they were helping this old guy down the stairs who said he worked on education funding under Lincoln. And it dawned on me that anything I leave out, there are some experts in the room who has worked on this issue for a long time, including Bert Doctor. And so I just feel that I am in good company. Well, let me not use a lot of our time on trivialities. They told me that I have 15 minutes to speak and then a few moments to answer questions. And I am a pastor, as you know, and I preached yesterday 3 times for 55 minutes each. I am also a politician, which is a dangerous combination. You have a pastor who is a politician behind the microphone in front of prestigious people, and you said speak for 15 minutes. That is like asking Krispy Kreme to make a donut. But I will give it my best. Let me talk about these few moments, and thank you all for coming out, and so many of my friends are here, and I made them buy tables so that City Club would think that somebody wanted to hear what I have to say. Education, a moral imperative. I've heard it said before, Hermine, that all it takes for evil to exist is for good people to sit back and do nothing. In other words, if all of us would just watch and say nothing and do nothing, it won't be long until evil can and will take over our society. I use the word moral on purpose because we just watched the controversy surrounding Terry Schiavo. None of us intended to get involved in the Terry Schiavo case, but we were all drawn into it whether we wanted to be in it or not. And it wasn't long until at every restaurant and in every home, all of us had an opinion about what should happen in the Terry Schiavo case. And what made that case so different was we were all trying to make a moral judgment, what's right or what's wrong. This past election that we just had that swept George W. Bush into office, it all boiled down at the end of the day to a word called values or morality. George Bush was elected because somehow he was able to convince the American people that he was the most moral guy. And you all, I don't care how we cut it, we want people who stand for something, and we want people that we feel who has moral integrity. And he was able to reach a segment of people based on his moral stance. Well, as I thought about that, I wanted to say to you today, what greater value than a high quality education for every child in America? It is wrong, and it is a moral wrong in a civilized society for us to determine how we're going to spend and how much money we're going to spend on a child's education based solely on where they live. That has to be wrong. It can't be anything right about that. For us to determine if your parents are property rich, you get a good education. If your parents are not property rich, you get a bad education. And that has to be a moral disgrace. Not only that, but we've all read last week that there is this tremendous growing gap between the haves and the have-nots in the area of education, and that all boils down to the funding formula. I remember the America that I grew up in and the America that you grew up in. There was a time when America, we were leading the industrialized world academically. We were the smartest people around. I don't know if we were the smartest people around. Today, we have fallen behind the Chinese. We've fallen behind Japan. We've fallen behind Britain. We've fallen behind France. I remember as a kid when we used to watch television, and there was always this anxiety over spaceships. There was always this anxiety over the Martians. And we always thought, you remember my favorite Martin? Anybody remember Uncle Martin? Come on now. Remember Uncle Martin? Uncle Martin had the antennas that came out of his head. And that's when TV was clean, by the way. That's when television was clean, by the way. Uncle Martin wasn't trying to have sex with nobody. And somebody asked me the other day, Wayne, whatever happened to UFOs? Whatever happened to spaceships? Whatever happened? You know, we don't hear a lot about that anymore. When we were younger, that's all we heard about, spaceships and UFOs. And I said to somebody, I know exactly what happened. And every ear in the room perked up when I said that I have the answer. I know exactly what happened to UFOs, spaceships, and Martians. They have now landed in Japan, China, and Britain because they know we don't know nothing. And there's no need in them coming to America because we've de-emphasized education. And so they thought they were coming here to learn, but they discovered that there was nothing to learn here, so they are now landing in other countries. You could clap. I think that all of us in this room ought to beware because the decline of education has happened on our watch. We're the adults now. This is our society now. This is not the society of our parents or their parents. We're on deck. And the decline of education has happened on our watch. This society that we have today and the demise of education was not the system that we grew up in. We grew up in a better system. That's why you can sit in this room today, successful businessmen and businesswomen and professionals, because the school system that we inherited was a good system. But the one that we preside over today is terrible, and it's our fault. I know that this is strange, but look at somebody and tell them it's your fault. Look at somebody and tell them it's your fault. You didn't wake up this morning and pay $250 for a table, come all the way here to not be blamed for something. With that in mind, everybody knows that the educational system in Illinois and or the world is broke. Elected officials know that a decent, high-quality education is right for every child. That is why the first plank in every political platform is always what? What is it? Education. Y'all scared to be wrong? Education. It is always, I don't care who it is, every political platform's first plank is education. Even though the real issue was slavery, I bet you that Jefferson Davis ran for the presidency of the Confederacy by promising to make the schools in the South better than the schools in the North. Politicians always promise as a top priority to fix education. We know that the system here in the state of Illinois has been broken for as long as we can remember, or as long as we've lived here, or as long as we've been here. We know that the system is broken, and I don't care who it is who runs for office, everybody promises to fix education. Question: would you elect the person who said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to be here and to address you today as I run for this momentous office of senator, governor, state representative. And the first thing I want to tell you is that all I care about is being reelected. My first priority when I get in office will be me. I will weigh every decision based on whether or not it's good for my political future. Regardless of who needs my help, regardless of who cares about right or wrong, if it does not advance me, later for you. Punch 1, 2, 3 to enhance my future." You wouldn't elect, am I right about that? You wouldn't elect that woman, you wouldn't elect that guy. That's not what we say when we run for office, but that's what we do when we get in. If this was church, somebody would have said amen. That's not what we say. We don't tell you that, we don't say that. But that's what we do. I have a bill that I'm getting ready to talk about in my last 5 minutes, Senate Bill 750. I've talked to every one of my colleagues on the Senate side about this bill, and every one of them, they've said the exact same thing to me. Jim, you know my name is James, but you know Jim. Jim, we know that you're right. And Jim, we know that there is a problem here, and we know that somebody has to fix this situation. And if this were right for me to do politically, I'd be with you, but I have to weigh this to decide whether or not this is right for me politically. I can't understand that. I can't understand the person saying, we know you're right. We know this is the right thing to do. But in essence, what they're saying is, I have to make sure that it's right for my political future. Not only that, let me say to those of you who are in this room, you know what's right. And you keep sending the same people back to office year after year who promises that they're going to fix something that they never even work on. How many of you, you're all business people, I look at you, you've been networking, you're astute, you're smart, you all have a business, and so I'm sure that that business is housed somewhere in some location, probably a downtown one overlooking a river or something. Right on, amen at you. How many of you would keep hiring the same plumber come to fix your pipes, who show up every day, read the paper, talk on the telephone, go to lunch, come back and read Chicago Style magazine, go to dinner, and never get around to fixing the pipe? Not even looking at it. Not even a recommendation for who else could come in and look at the pipe. And yet we say the system in Illinois has been broken for 35 years. We send the same people back. You contribute. You give to their campaigns because they have you in a posture where you're afraid not to, because you think that if you don't give and then they win, then they're not going to help you on whatever it is that you're working on. So I understand. But they never fix the one thing that's their priority, which is education. I think that, and I know that this is being taped for CAN TV. I almost took this out because I'm not going to be the most popular person around after this speech, and so don't tell anybody this is coming on CAN TV. They didn't get that little notice that y'all got, and so they ain't gonna know that it's on. I'm not opposed to term limits for people in office. I think that's something we should study. I think that's something we should look at. And the reason I think we should look at term limits is because elected officials might need to just fix something and get out. Just fix something, just fix something, just find something that's wrong, fix it and get out, rather than perpetuating its problem so that you can stay in. Maybe if people would fix something and get out, everybody would work on something to fix so that they could have a legacy and they could say, I fixed that. I've introduced a bill, Senate Bill 750. This is what the bill does. It raises our personal income taxes from 3% to 5%. Illinois will still be one of the lowest tax states when this bill passes. To raise the income taxes from 3% to 5% will raise $5.2 billion in new revenue. Not gambling money, not money whether or not Uncle Willie get drunk and go and play the slot machines, and then that's how we gonna fund education based on how many beers Uncle Willie have and how many nickels the old lady lose from the senior citizens complex. That's really not the way to fund education. The bill raises the personal income tax from 3% to 5%, but it raises $5.2 billion in new revenue. It raises corporate income taxes from 4.8 to 8%. That is another, Oh yeah, everybody want a great society, but don't nobody want to pay for it. That raises another $669 million. That is a total of $5,886 $869 million in new revenue. Well, how will we spend it? Let's talk about how will we spend $5,869,000. I bet you that everybody in this room would like to have the problem of spending $5,869 million. This is how we will spend it. We will invest $1,200 more per child in the foundation level. That's $1,200. When Bert Doctor was on the EFAB commission, they recommended $1,000 per child. The governor, his new commission that he just sanctioned, they have recommended $1,600 per child. In other words, just to bring Illinois children up to a standard, the new EFAB commission said we have to spend $1,600 more per child. So this bill that I have will generate $1,200 more per child at a cost of $1.8 billion. We will reduce, and Hermine, here's the good part, we will reduce property taxes by 30% for every property owner. 30%. That's what. 30% property tax reduction. That will cost us $2.9 billion. We will fund special education and the mandated categoricals, and that costs $120 million. And then we will spend $350 million on higher education. 75% of that will go to the universities, and Wayne, 25% of that will go to community colleges. Now, what do we do in a society when can't nobody afford to go to college? What are we gonna do? Can't nobody afford to go to college? We were fortunate enough, we were blessed enough to be able. People, do you know that in the last 12 years, we've cut higher education by about 25%? Every time we're looking for money, we're higher education, higher education. We will also spend $300 million in this bill for a family tax credit. A family tax credit will be awarded to a family of 4 with an income below $32,000, which means that they won't be hurt by the increase in the income tax. That is, for those of you who pay attention to this kind of stuff, that was an initiative originally thought of by Ronald Reagan. We'll also put $190 million into the local government distributive fund, and it'll be spread out for municipalities 3% across the board. Right now they get 10%, but of this new money in this bill, they will get 3%. That amount that comes back to Chicago alone under this portion of the bill will be over $50 million, and that's enough money for Chicago to be able to tackle the CTA problem. My question is this, as you get ready to ask me questions, when is it wrong to do right? For every elected official who claims that education is their top priority, my question is, where is your plan? What amazed me about introducing this bill, and I wish I could tell you how many places I've had a chance to speak. I wish I could tell you how many forums that I've been invited to speak to. And what has amazed me more than anything else, when I introduced the bill, when I put this plan on the table, I didn't have to move any other plan out the way. I didn't have to move one plan out of the way. When my plan hit the table, wasn't no other plan there. It's the only plan on the table. 117 representatives, 59 senators, and no plan on the table except for one, and it's everybody's top priority. Now, if my plan is bad, I'll be happy to work with yours. If my plan is not the right one, I'll be more than happy to get behind the right one. But I work on a theory that says my plan is the best plan until another plan hits the table. And if another plan doesn't hit the table, my plan is the best plan. This room is on fire, burning up. And everybody's standing around trying to figure out what to do. And the room is on fire. Parts of the beams are falling. Part of the roof is collapsing. And I say, I tell you what, everybody, one by one, we're gonna make it to this corner and we're gonna get out. You stand there, no, we ain't gonna do that. we ain't gonna do that. I don't like that. I don't like that. All right, okay, fine, I'll defer. I mean, you know, I think we got about 3 more minutes. I'll defer. What do you want to do? Well, let's see. This year ain't the right year because it's an election year. Maybe. Wait, come on now. The clock is ticking. What's your plan? Well, I don't really have one, but I don't like yours. Well, now, you're going to either follow a plan or burn up. And I submit to you today as I close, we either fix this problem or I ask Anthony and the group to invite me back next year because we'll be talking about it again. Because we've been talking about it for 30 years. We either fix it, we either get behind a plan. Then let's take my plan and tweak it. If it's not right, let's tweak it. Let's twist it. Let's turn it. Let's do something. But let's all get behind a plan. And in the absence of a plan, the one on the table right now is the best plan. And I ask for your help, your prayers, your encouragement, and you work with us as we try to pass Senate Bill 750. Thank you so much. Do I take questions from here? Yes. Questions. They have a microphone set up. And questions. Hermine, let somebody else ask one first because you my best friend in the world and you might ask me something hard.
Good morning. I've heard about the Senate bill that you referred to, and it's also been known as Illinois A+. Can you explain how there's a national study, and the reason why it's called A+ is not because Illinois got a B or a C or a D, but we actually were graded an F across the nation in funding education. And then also, can you talk about the social responsibility? I heard you speak on WTTW, I believe, where you mentioned mentoring high school students in their freshman and sophomore year, and how that makes a really big difference in their success in high school.
I can't talk about that and get everybody to work on time. I will say that the society does bear a responsibility. We're putting a program together. The high school dropout rate is 67% among African American youth. We're putting a program together so that every African American teenage boy in high school or every freshman can be mentored so that we could stop the dropout rate. A+ Coalition is a group who works on education funding, and you're 100% correct. Illinois received, we're 48 out of 50 in funding education, 48 out of 50, and we received an F on the national funding scale, and that's why we have to fix this problem. Yes, sir.
Reverend Senator, I like your plan. There is one question, and it's a question that we sometimes have with our politicians, and that is, once the revenue increases, how can we be sure that the fund will be used in the way that they say they will be used in the plan?
I was hoping somebody asked that question. Isn't that a shame in a civilized society, which is why I talked about morals and values, that we have to ask that question? How do we know? In other words, we don't really trust our government. We think our government, we think the governor, we think he's a crook. We think the General Assembly, we think they're crooks. You all got some inside information that the rest of us don't know about? Why is it that we even have to wonder if people who've been elected to do the right thing, once the bill is passed, will do the right thing? We're going to put it in a special fund, which is why there's so many. I did not know when I got to Springfield that there were 995 funds that you can't touch and you can't sweep. And now I know why. Because whenever a revenue stream is created, in order to ensure that we do what we're supposed to do with the money, the bill also has to contain a place, a special fund, so that it can't be swept. And that's how we're going to try to protect this fund as well. Hermine?
Meeks, you give me a bad name. You know I love you. I ain't gonna answer that hard. How can we support you, sir?
Thank you so.
How can the business community, how can we support the bill? Because you do have a plan, you got a good plan. I think we need to talk about that corporate tax a little bit, but cut that down by about 2%. So we can stay in these businesses, these little people, but how can we support you? That's my question.
The way that you guys can support me, and thank you so much for asking that question, you all have counterparts all over the state. In order for this bill to pass, and let me just look at the Senate, we're going to have a veto-proof majority because the governor has already said that he's going to veto any income tax increase. I argue that the governor is not the only elected official in Springfield, which is the reason the law says that when the governor is not making good sense, or when the governor has made a campaign promise that he chooses to stick to, and he should. Listen, I'm not against the guy for making a promise and sticking to it. I pray that we have more elected officials who make promises and at least stick to them. However, you got 117 people in the House and 59 people in the Senate. We ain't make that promise. We didn't make that promise. And the way the law is written is that whenever the governor vetoes a bill, we can override it. And so we have to have a veto-proof majority. The way that we can get there is that you in the business community, if you contact your counterparts in every Senate district, and you say to them that not only do we support Senate Bill 750, but you need to call your senator and or your representative and say, I support this piece of legislation. We hope you get behind it. One thing elected officials try to act like they're going to listen to the business community. And I pray that you call all of your counterparts. If we organize, Senator Luchterfelt down in Carbondale could care less about getting 1,000 calls from the west side of Chicago. He could care less about that. But if 1,000 people in Carbondale who will or will not re-elect him, then it makes a difference. And so we have to organize in the area where the elected official lives and get his or her constituents involved and get them to call. And so that's what the business community can do. All right? Yes, sir.
My name is Marty Gleason, and I'm a member of the City Club. Senator, I agree and support the Senate Bill 750, but you talked about the moral question involved in education. There is also a moral question in how people are taxed on their property, because it is a very difficult situation when you have people similarly situated in terms of the property they own, but not similarly situated in their assets or in their income. And property taxes are also a moral issue, and I think that is the way that some of the suburban senators and representatives need to hear about it from the senior citizens, and I'm almost as old as your father, and so I know a little bit about that. But that's a part of the equation that I think needs to be talked about. And there are two moral questions. One is how the young people who are in our educational system are treated. And then there's the moral question about housing and what it costs you. Young people can't afford to buy houses with the tax structure the way it is, and old people can't afford to stay in the houses they built because of the tax structure. And I think that a little emphasis on that moral question might bring more people into the tent and help you get that veto-proof majority you're going to need.
Well, thank you so much, and give it up. That's right. Thank you so much. We will definitely emphasize from henceforth, now and forever, that this bill will reduce the property taxes of senior citizens 30%, because it reduces everybody's property taxes, and so that should be welcome news to seniors and to everybody, and we'll make sure that we stress that, because that is a moral part of this argument. Yes, ma'am.
Senator Meeks, how you doing this morning?
Good morning.
I just want to be clear in my thinking when I hear you talk about education across the board, that not only will this bill now bring a better education system for the students in the inner city, does that mean that there's going to be better teachers, you know, quality teachers, after-school programs, computer learning for our children? Does that mean they're going to get the same books that the suburban children have, or across the board with the same quality of education? That's my question to you.
Let me answer all of those by saying yes. With $1,200 more to spend per pupil, that the bill also aims toward the classroom and the classroom only, then there will be more dollars in order to restore some of the programs that we've lost over the years. I think under the new program that the governor is proposing, $300 million for education, this bill will produce $1.8 billion. And so I just simply say compare what $300 million will do versus what $1.8 billion will do, and I'll tell you that this is the better plan.
I hear you talk about the trust issues, and every time we have these new bills that come up for education, we don't really see a change. And so I hear you saying that who do you trust? How do we know that the money, will we see a difference in our inner city youth, in inner city schools? Will there be a difference? That's what I'm waiting to see. Whoever brings the bill up, you know, I want to be able to support you, call our senators, whatever it takes, but I want to be able to pick up the paper and say that the test scores for the students on 51st as high as the test scores as a student in Homewood Flossmoor.
Well, I can only tell you that I cannot stand here and say, yes, I guarantee you that we will see a change. But I can stand here and tell you that I guarantee you if we don't do something, we won't see a change. That I could tell you. All right? And I think my time is getting ready to run out. All right? These two more, and then they have, yes.
Good morning. This may be a difficult question, but how do you answer the critics who say that throwing more money at the problem is not the solution?
I would say then that why have we had two, every year, every governor has an education funding advisory board. Every governor, Edgar, Thompson, Ryan, and now Blagojevich. And every education funding advisory board advises the administration that we are not spending enough money. Every one of them. So why do we keep having advisory boards if we're not going to listen to what they say? And so that's how I would answer it. It has to be a funding problem. If every Blagojevich, the one thing he didn't want to hear from the new fund advisory board, he didn't want to hear. So they got rid of Bert Doctor and them and got their own group. And their own group came in. And whereas Bert Doctor's group said one thing, this group comes back now, who's the governor's own group, who's also been restricted from being able to give remedies or solutions. The only thing they could do was point out the problem. That's the only thing that they were mandated to do, was point out the problem. And they said the problem was we're spending far less per child. And they can't talk about solutions. They can, I can. Yes, last one.
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Sharon Matthews from the Sicker Foundation. Will there also be enough money, Senator, to restore college education to those who are incarcerated in our state prisons? These programs prove to be the most effective in cutting recidivism rate along with employment. So will there be enough dollars also for that?
That's a good question to ask. And let me just simply say, like Hermine said, as we look back at the bill, And now that you bring that up, I hope so. Let me tell you this in closing and what I've learned about a bill. Because in order to get consensus and to get every vote that you need, you have to go and talk to different legislators. And so when you talk to legislators, they say, will there be money in this bill for a shooting range down in Quincy to educate young people on how to properly handle? And then somebody else will say, will there be money in? And I've discovered that a bill in Springfield is just like a camel. You know what a camel is, don't you? A camel is a horse that was put together by a Senate committee. Once you get through with all the compromises, that's what you end up with. And so as we look at this bill, I hope that we can find money for that. But as we look at it, everybody wants money for everything. And our primary concern is K through 12. And our primary concern right now has been the kids that ain't in trouble so they won't get in trouble. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Senator